Yo, what's up? This is Splendid Radio on Pharcyde TV with my co-host Jeremy Scipio
What's going on, people?
and special guest, special guest Matt Himes of the Levitt. Uh, Real pleasure to have you on, man. I appreciate it. I've heard the Levitt brought up in conversations. I've heard shows going on there. I've even had people try to me to get the group to do shows there several times, and it's just, the stars didn't line up or whatever. But it's a pleasure having you on. With the podcast, we always started from hip hop because I just feel like hip hop is like a common thread that everybody can kind of relate to. So, where were you the first time you heard hip hop, and what was the name of the song?
That's a hard one. I mean, first, like, thank you for having me come on. I don't know. I mean, I grew up in LA, so it's like I'm from LA, so it's like I almost feel like it's always been around. Like I don't, it's like just listening. I mean, it's always been on the streets. It's always, I mean, I don't know. First person, I don't know, maybe like Slick Rick. I don't know, like I remember listening to him as a kid. I mean, I grew up in the '90s, so I mean, like. A lot of NWA and like West Coast Connection, like Dub C and like Dr. Dre and all that. Like, so I was a kid during that time. So it was always around. But I don't know. I think like maybe when I was a kid, especially like in middle school, I listened to a lot of Cool Keith. Like Dr. Octagon is like one of my favorite albums of all time. Like regardless of genre, like I just, when I always want to go back to something that makes me feel nostalgic. I mean, yeah, Dr. Octagon. I mean, that song, like No Awareness. I mean, I still love that song. Like to this day, I listen to it like at least once a week. So that's kind of like the vibes of going. I've always enjoyed him because he's always been kind of a little bit out there. I kind of like the weirder stuff. I mean, I listened to a lot of Wu-Tang when I was a kid. Method Man. I always like ODB. He's like he's kind of like my go-to as well.
ODB, that's a good one. Yo, did you ever think hip hop would become what it is today? Can you hear me?
Not like, I don't know. It's not like I feel like I could predict things, but I mean, like it felt like it was like where it's going. It's its natural progression. I mean, it's almost kind of like entered in like the pop realms of things where it's kind of like a mainstay for a lot of music. I mean, you even hear like a lot of pop artists now that are like incorporating those beats and those vibes into their music now. So it seems to kind of be like, hip hop is, it's American music, just as much as jazz or country or rock, it's part of our culture. Like it's we all are. So yeah.
You want to hear something crazy? So, when I'd go out with because I road managed as well as managed the Pharcyde, and when we would whenever we'd arrive to a city and we'd rent a car and drive around or whatever, we always go to like the popular station. And so while searching for the popular station, depending on where we are, you have a like a Power 106 kind of station, you have a beat kind of a station, and then you have just like the pop station and then the country station if you search far enough. And the craziest thing is that like I've been in, where were we? It wasn't Florida. We were somewhere that was kind of down south. And I remember scrolling through the radio stations and I found a country station and there was trap beats. it was like it was like country music, but it was like almost some trap production, and then the cadences of them saying the lyrics was very similar to like a rapping kind of cadence. And I was like, man, hip hop is huge. If people don't even understand, like hip hop is so woven into the fabric of America that we don't even understand, like that it's kind of like made its way to everything.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, you even hear that now with like, especially the young kids, like these teenagers now, they're even mixing like I'm listening to some kids, they're mixing like, regional Mexican music like norteños and corridos, and they're like mixing that with trap now. I mean, you even, like Snoop Dogg got into that. I mean, even said, that kind of music, gangster recognizes gangster. So I mean, you see it going in all kinds of places, and you see like this American style music being exported throughout the world. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in South America, Central America. I mean, there's a lot of talent coming out of it, a lot of places that are mixing it. I mean, one of the biggest, genres in the world right now is reggaeton, where that got mixed in because like people down, in Panama and like Jamaicans got together and like, and mixed hip hop. You got to Puerto Rico and Colombia and mixed hip hop with it. So you see it like happening with, it's just been everywhere now. And I think it's justifiably so. I mean, like just there's so much talent coming out of it. Like people being able to like mix those beats like that and just having that kind of flow. I mean, I can't do that. I don't know. I think it's part of who we are now. Like, and it's reaching out to the rest of the world, and then it's all coming all back into America, and people from all the world are coming back, coming touring here. So I think it's a beautiful thing to see.
When did you realize you had a passion for music?
Probably middle school. Not that, like when I was younger, I didn't have it. I mean, I've always been kind of a creative. I was into theater. I was into drama, into film a lot when I was a kid. But yeah, middle school and really like, starting up high school when I started playing music myself, I started out playing guitar and DJing. Kind of how I got started in the music industry. I was like DJing like drum and bass and jungle. Like DJ SS, AK-1200, Diesel Boy. The metalheads out of the UK. So I was really into that, when I was in high school, and that's kind of, I mean, and I just kind of like fell into it. My friend, one of my mom's friends, he had a DJ deck, and he, let me buy it off of him, and I just kind of like started teaching myself, and then from there, kind of started playing live and everything like that. And so, that's kind of how I kind of got started with that. So I think, especially that part of like the electronic music scene, especially jungle and drum and bass, it's very heavily influenced by the hip hop scenes. It's almost like you slow down that music, like it's pretty much just sped up, jungle and drum and bass is just sped up hip hop.
Well, my family's from Mississippi, man. We tell stories and we make good barbecue. So on that note, I've had some 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning London and Amsterdam drum and bass adventures and and all that. And it's crazy because it's like I watch a movie, or when I was watching the Corner Boy, like I hear those beats and I hear that kind of stuff, and it triggers a memory in my mind to walking out of a club in London, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning and chips. But drum and bass is dope, man. It's like but I'll tell you what helped me. I got introduced to it in the club. So you know what I'm saying? So it's like when you're in the club, when you're in the environment, you hear it and everything, it's a different thing than maybe if someone like handed you a tape or like, oh man, listen to this or whatever. And then and so that was my little drum and bass, and I had to add that in there, man.
I know you mentioned a couple of times that you were from LA. Like, was you like LA proper, or was it like?
No, I was born at MLK. But mostly when I was younger, I grew up in like the San Pedro. It's where most of my mom's side of the family, they're from San Pedro. But I primarily grew up out in Riverside County and Moreno Valley. So I kind of went there, and then I ended up going to school down in Irvine College, but like my sophomore year of school, I just straight up moved to LA just because all the work was here. Although I feel like Orange County and Riverside's changed quite a bit from when I when I graduated college like 15 years ago. There wasn't as much, music to do. I mean, that's, what I wanted to do with my free time was just go out to music events. It wasn't really like into the beach or movies or like, stuff like that. It's like, no, I want to go to concerts, I want to go see live music. So, I mean, it was all happening here in LA. But I mean, also it was in the, in the EDM scene. So a lot of stuff happened out in San Bernardino. I've hung out a lot in there as well. So that's, why I'm, kind of moved back to LA. Most of when my great grandparents, they immigrated to this country. Yeah. They moved to Carson and Wilmington. So, I mean, so, just coming back to, where my family's from, essentially. I mean, my grandparents, their first house when they bought it was in Compton. So, I didn't quite necessarily grow up in LA proper, but, kind of on the outskirts of it, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's dope. Hey man, I'm broadcasting live from Harbor City right now, man. You know what I'm saying? We South Bay. We South Bay to the heart, man. I've moved away lightweight since I was like I moved to South Bay like 75 and I've gone away, but the South Bay is just where that's just, where I am. So where'd you go to junior high?
Yeah, out in Moreno Valley, school called, I think, Mountain View Middle School. Went there, and then I went to Valley View High School out in Moreno Valley up until my senior year, and then ended up moving out to Irvine my senior year of high school, just because like my parents, they got like a really good job out there, and then I just ended up going to college there just because got those state well, not sponsorships, but I got like a bunch of stuff to be able to pay money essentially at the tuition, because that I don't know kids do it today, because I look at the prices, I'm like, it's almost double to when I went to this college. I'm like, man, like, so yeah.
Dude, I had a homeboy who dated this girl who was she was Japanese, and she was going to Cal State Dominguez, and this was probably around maybe around like 2004, 2003, 2004. And I want to say, man, she was probably paying like $20,000 a semester, something like that. Because the way that they have it is, other countries aren't just going to send their people over here to get all educated and cool and just all that so they can bounce out and and make other countries fruitful and stuff like that. If you're not a citizen, then there's a tax that you pay, even for a Cal State Dominguez. You know what I'm saying? Which wasn't, it was a decent school, but I mean, 20 G's is a whoo.
Oh no, it's a big hustle. Like, it's big, the business of college is still business. Like they make their money. I don't know. Hopefully that changes and everything, makes it a little more equitable for folks, and like being able to go to different schools and everything. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I chose Irvine purely because of, I was able to get like a lot of tuition waived and like different scholarships, I guess you could say. So that was kind of like my main choice or main reason for staying in state.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a thing that people tend to overlook, is that you kind of hit it right on the head. College is big business. Like that's like even though they push it to kids, freshly 18, fresh adults, but overall, like, just like signing those papers, which are equivalent to like housing loans.
Saying to sit there and have like these 18-year-olds sign like a loan for like $100,000, and it's all like that's not a little amount of money, so it's hopefully like things change, everything. I know it seems like a lot of things are changing in this country, hopefully moving in the right direction, so make it more equitable for folks, and so they can kind of like come on up and put the work in to transform their own lives.
Mm-hmm. So what was the poppin' music going on in your junior high school?
A lot of like West Side Connection, like Dub C, Mac 10, Dr. Dre, Ice Cube. Those were kind of like some of the big ones that I think if I have to try to remember. Those are kind of like the big ones that I feel like people would listen to a lot. I mean, there's also like a lot of the metal scenes that were like really big in the late 90s, early 2000s were pretty big. I also listened to, my parents listened to a lot of classic rock, and like, my parents, grandparents listened to a lot of Motown records. So I like grew up, listen to people like Stevie Wonder, Thelma Houston, the Supremes, which is kind of funny because now I end up tour managing for a couple Motown Records people. So it's,
cool.
I work for Thelma Houston. I used to work for Mary Singer before she passed away, and did some stuff with Smokey Robinson. So it's kind of like serendipitous for me to kind of like, like my grandfather before he passed away, he gave me all his Motown records, and now like get to work for them. So it's kind of a trip for me.
Oh man, it's crazy. When you're younger, you have certain experiences, and it's crazy as when you become an adult, it's kind of like that experience was the seed that brings you back to where you were when you were younger and whatnot. But that's tight. So when you were going to junior high school, was it like you were out in Moreno Valley, correct?
Mm-hmm.
was at that time, was it like really multicultural?
I would say so. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I want to get like too like conspiracy theory, but pretty much a lot of people would refer to Moreno Valley as Little Compton.
No, that's
You
I
know,
was getting there.
yeah. So in a lot of that, this is why I say I don't want to get too conspiracy theory, but a lot of it has to do with what happened with Freeway Rick Ross and what was happening in Compton in the 80s. And a lot of people, there's an exodus coming out of Compton and going into Moreno Valley because the housing was cheaper. And like, our government was kind of like when Reagan was under control, he was kind of going in and like buying houses and like a lot of, selling houses and properties being buying. A lot of people who originally were like grew up in Compton and everything, they couldn't no longer afford the area anymore. I mean, it's similar to what's happening now with Inglewood around the new stadium and everything. So it's, yeah, but no, but I would definitely say Moreno Valley is extremely diverse in its populations. It still is.
Yeah, it was basically what they did was well, a lot of gangsters that end up having to leave, they left to go out there, but then also, they told a lot of people, oh man, if you move out here, it's, we're building freeways, it's not going to be anything, you can come to LA real fast, there's not going to be any traffic, and all this, that, and the third, and you can keep your job in LA and you can commute, and this was before trains and all that kind of stuff, you know what I'm saying? This was when it was just a hard standstill, very hot.
When was this?
Oh man, this was like
early 90s, something like that, because I remember that because my parents got swept up on that too, and they're like, and then they would still work their jobs in LA, and like, they're commuting 2 hours each way, and it's like, I don't know who's telling you there wasn't going to be any traffic, but yeah.
Yeah, it was like from 85, like 85 up until like the mid 90s or whatever, and then they got the railways and stuff like that, which that took a lot of stress off of people because people could just hop on the train and then figure it out from there. But it was really like a big I got you, because people were selling their homes and they're like, well, okay, we can sell this home that 3 generations of people have lived in and have come up in and whatever, and then you can go out to Moreno Valley and you can have this, you have fruit trees everywhere, like a utopia. They kind of sold it to the people as a utopia. So that's something that's interesting. So in high school, what did you think that you would be after you graduated from high school?
I was really into film. My mom, she works in the film industry herself, so I was just during the summers and everything like that, she's like, you ain't staying home by yourself and causing trouble. So I would actually go out, like from freshman until I was a senior high school every summer, I would essentially intern or work the summer, at her job and everything. So I mean, a lot of the people that worked there, they saw me and like they took me under the wing and like taught me how to edit film, edit sound, record, work cameras and everything like that. And that's actually what I went my first year of college, what I went to college for. But then at the same time, like my junior, senior year of high school, I started playing music a lot more and started actually playing out, live shows and everything. And I just kind of like fell in love with it. Ended up changing my major to sound design and theater management. At the same time, trying to be a musician, trying to be a DJ, and trying to like make it, quote unquote. And yeah, I mean, so yeah, I thought I was gonna like be making films or something like that, but then I ended up like doing music and started booking my own shows. And I kind of got in that because like it kind of fell on me, within the bands I was playing with or when I was DJing to like essentially be my own manager, be my own PR agent, and doing all that back end work and administration. And also at the same time, a lot of some of the DJ stuff I was playing when like we'd have to bring our own PA or. So I ended up like buying my own PA and everything, and that's how I kind of ended up becoming a sound engineer. Because I would do a lot of before the Staples Center opened in 2008. I remember doing a lot of underground shows and like around Skid Row and like the warehouse districts of LA and like the Arts District before it was what it is today. Get away with shows back then. They weren't necessarily permitted, I guess you could say. So. You can get back, you could get away with that back then. You can't do that shit now. So I mean, that's kind of how I kind of fell into it, because it was out of necessity and need, because I wasn't necessarily going after like the major venues or like the proper venues, I guess you could say, that had like a bar and everything, because I was underage, so I couldn't necessarily perform at these clubs and everything, being most of the clubs in LA are 21 and over. Well, I had to go somewhere and I wanted to play music. So we just ended up finding, different warehouses all around the warehouse district in downtown South, parts of South LA around USC. And I would just hit up like warehouse people and be like, hey, can I give you some money and let me throw a show and like, be all good. I played in a lot of like punk rock bands when I was a teenager. And a lot of the PAs we play at like kind of these warehouse DIY venues, they didn't have proper sound, I guess you could say, or sound that could like keep up with how loud we were. So I kind of ended up purchasing my own PAs and everything and doing our own sound. And then like bands noticed that I could do that as well. And just kind of like blew up from there. And then I kept doing it. And then I started, being a tour manager for a bunch of bands. And just because I guess I was the most organized amongst all my peers, I guess you could say, of like being able to handle the paperwork and the taxes and making sure like everything was all straight and people were getting paid properly and making sure to communicate with the venues. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I somewhat fell into it, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So real quick, Jeremy, I got a great idea.
Okay.
So we need to hook up with Matt when he's not working, and we need to figure out how to throw this big comedy jam. You know what I'm saying? and we take all our resources and put them together because Matt seems like he knows how to get it popping. He's being a little modest right here, but
yeah, that would be great. I would love that. Yeah, I mean, LA's huge for comedy and everything. Us in New York are kind of like the big ones and everything. So there's a lot going on here. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, I'm down. Let's do it. So we also have like a comment section where people chime in, because it's a live podcast on YouTube or whatever. So a couple of the questions that our viewership wanted to know. One was, what do you think of the pay-to-play concept that new artists have to deal with?
Oh, it's bullshit. Like it sucks. Like it's like that's. I mean, I get it. Like venues are kind of in a precarious place, especially with artists that are starting out and just kind of cutting their teeth, I guess you could say. I mean, like I said about college, I mean, the business of music is still business, and like it's hard because it's, but the pay to play model, it's horseshit. I got to be honest with you. Like, to actually force bands to like essentially pay a venue to play a certain place, I hope they go out of business because it's just like, it's not cool. Like I know they have to have a balance. They got to pay rent just like everyone else, and they got bills, but like there has to be, and that is something I am a little worried about LA, because you see like these warehouses, these DIY venues, where are these places that, not everyone starts out being able to play the Wiltern or play the Hollywood Bowl or the Greek or anything like that. They got to go, like, it takes some getting used to be on that stage and playing in front of people. Like, you got to like work that out from you, and you got to work out your shows. So it's, yeah, I don't think the pay to play is like really conducive to like creative folks in LA and how they do it. I mean, the best thing I feel like you could do is like, for artists that are starting on out and they want to kind of avoid that, is find other bands that are like quote unquote bigger or essentially making it, and like, befriend them. I mean, it's all a community, you all got to get to know each other and participate. I think that's the one thing, I try to tell bands that are making out, and lessons I learned when I was younger is like, you got to go out. Like, no one's going to be like calling you up when you're just sitting in your crib and like just hanging out. Like, you got to go out and get your name out there and let people know that this is what you're all about and what you can do. And like, you'll find certain people, or at least that's what was successful for me, is finding other people that, were essentially above you, I guess, or like had more experience or had opportunities, and try to open up for them. Even if you got to play for free for a little bit or something like that, until you can get to a point where you can get a fan base. I mean, I know one thing they teach, a lot of upcoming musicians right now is, if you can find 1,000 fans that can like spend $100 on you a year, and like, I mean, that's $100 grand, so like, that's where, start making goals for yourself to get your word out there. I mean, I think, that's half the point of like the music, is to like get more people to see who you are and support your art. And avoid it. Avoid the pay to play. Don't play there. Like, you're not going to get treated nice. They're not going to promote the show. They're going to depend on you to bring all the audience members. And yeah, there is a lot of responsibility on artists that, yeah, you do have to have a draw. but also, you know, you want to work with the venues to ensure that like they're promoting it too. They have a marketing plan. They're, you know, like they have PR people pushing the shows for you and making sure that folks know. I mean, you know, it's also LA's a beast, you know, where it's just like New York City. I mean, but you know, if you can make it here in LA or in New York City, you can make it anywhere. Because I'm, as much as I love LA, you know, it's my home, you know, I'm from here. Some of the best shows, you know, come from the middle of the country or like down in the South when they don't, you know, a lot of the kids and people out there, they may not have as much going on here in LA as we do. So like they have maybe a handful of venues. And so like when folks are coming out of town, like they'll come to your show, even if they don't know who you are, and buy your merch and everything like that. So it's, yeah, but you know, you just got to get your name out there and like, you know, find different avenues how you're going to do it. And it may not always be just, you know, don't be stuck here in LA, you know, try to invest in yourself to, you know, because it's still a business. You got to think of your band like, you know, like it's like your business. You got to put your name out there and put the work behind it and get your name out there. And like it, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But, you know, I think for the most part, you know, when you see the bands that are really working hard and not just doing it because it's like a vanity project or a cool thing to do, like they're really pushing their name out there. And they're, you know, there's a lot of sacrifices that you do have to make. You know, when I was younger, there were time, you know, family moments like holidays and Christmas and birthdays and stuff like that. I would miss out on that because I would be out on the road and like stuff like that. So it really, I mean, you know, really depends on what your goal set is, like what you want to do. I mean, for me, you know, I have the perspective of like, this is what I want to do with my life. I don't want to be working no retail job, making, you know, schlepping it and everything like that, working for some big company for them to make a shit ton of money. Like I want to work for myself or work for organizations that are like doing something to have something to say. You know, and that's the choices I've made with my life to make those sacrifices to ensure that I guess my income or like what I do for a living is, you know, is music, you know, because I don't know what I would be doing with myself without it. Like if I didn't, nothing else like gets me as excited. Nothing gets me out of bed more than like live music.
I'll give you an example of what you're speaking about. About 1985, 86, I can recall going to a show in Orange County. It was like a small little, like a bar kind of thing. And it might have held like maybe 500 people. But I remember Angelo mixing for No Doubt when they were a ska band. And so it's kind of like, and it was a big deal to them. Like that was when Fishbone was way bigger than No Doubt. Like that was before, that was when Fishbone was very, you know, No Doubt was like the little homies or whatever.
Yeah.
And man, it paid off. It's like, okay, No Doubt, they were from OC. They befriended Fishbone from LA in the Valley. And, you know, man, they paid the dues. They got, you know, Angelo to be the sound man for their shows. You know what I'm saying? Which, you know, maybe he was a dope sound man, maybe he wasn't. I can't really remember. I just remember it was a dope show. It was, I'm seeing Fishbone link with No Doubt, who had a buzz at the time. They were just buzzing at the time. And I'm sure that had something to do with No Doubt's rise from a garage ska band to a ska band playing in bars to, you know, moving on up, which I'm sure they did catch the eye of Angelo. You know what I'm saying? They probably, you know, in some kind of a way, which led to it. But I've dealt with like 3 venues around LA that have done that whole pay to play kind of thing or whatever. And I've always worked for the headliner. So I felt it's kind of like not my business to be in that part of the business. But then in one way I kind of look at it and I'm just like, man, it's kind of whack how they just kind of, you know, some of the promoters would just like dump the burden of all these tickets on these opening guys. And it was kind of like, these opening guys got to sell all these tickets and then they really don't even have a dressing room or anything in their dressing room. So I'm the kind of guy that's like, man, come on in the, come on in the dressing room, man. Get you like, man, you worked hard tonight too. You know what I'm saying?
Man, you got to earn your due. No, I'm kidding.
Well, there's a little bit of
dress outside. Dress in the...
You do got to earn your dues and everything, but also at the same time, like you said, yeah, like that's a prime example of like, and it's like that. It doesn't matter what genre it is. Like there, you know, especially here in LA. I mean, everybody's here out there. Like, I mean, not everybody. I'm exaggerating, but like we're a big town, so there's whatever kind of music you make. There, I guarantee, like there's somebody else out there that's somewhat similar to you or similar enough that like, you know, it's all about, you know, building your family and building your community around you and like seeking out those communities that are going to support you. Yeah, and that's a great, you know, it's a great example of No Doubt. I mean, I feel like, I don't know, Orange County. I feel like you're talking about like maybe the Chain Reactions. I don't know if they're still there or not, but that was kind of like one of like the main ska punk venues in Orange County, like especially North Orange County, where No Doubt's from. So and also like Angelo and Fishbone, they're like that. Like they want to like give back to the community and everything, and like
dude, I'll tell you some dope. We'll get on, but since we talk about Orange County, one of the dopest shows I saw, Faith No More, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and No Doubt at the Celebrity Theater. And the Celebrity Theater had a stage that it rotated. It went, it rotated. That was amazing. But that was a good one. So tell me this, man. You've been around all these musicians. I use hip hop because I just feel like hip hop is kind of why I do this podcast, and Jeremy brings the comedy aspect to it. And I feel like hip hop is something that, regardless of, because I had no idea that you even liked hip hop, like honestly, but I know that you haven't been under a rock for how old you are right now, and you have some type of a memory or a recollection of hip hop. But with you doing all that you've done, the tour managing, road managing, throwing parties, all that kind of stuff, what's the best advice that anyone's ever given you?
AK,
That's a great answer.
Yeah, it's the AK 1200 told me just be honest, don't be afraid, and don't try to impress people. Just be you. Like if you're your authentic self and you're genuine to yourself, people feel that. Even though like it's funny, people from outside LA want to make fun of how plastic LA is. Like, I don't know where I feel like that's the movies, but it's like, just being genuine and authentic to yourself, and people will feed on that. Like, if you're just you and you're not trying to like put on airs or nothing and like try to like, I get it, as an artist and everything like that. I mean, you have a persona you want to live up to and everything like that, but like live up to that persona, like take it to the max. Like don't half-ass anything. Like if you're gonna like really like invest in yourself and invest in like your craft, do it all the way. Like don't, like be genuine about it, but like also put everything into it, because people will feed off on that. Like, people around you, your fans, like the fans can tell on stage when you're full of shit. So if like you don't, like if you're just fronting, like people can tell, like, so like don't be afraid of like who you are and to like show that to the rest of the world, because people gravitate towards people that are willing to be vulnerable enough to show their real selves.
I'll say, so we have another guest chiming in. They wanted to ask you about the time you had to censor Fishbone to say funk racism.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of had to do, so we had Fishbone at the Levitt LA in 2018. I mean, our venue is an all ages environment, so we want everybody from all the way to the babies, all the way to grandma and great grandma to come on out. And so, we have to be conscientious that even though like that some of Fishbone's how they do it, we have to be conscientious of like, there are children that come along. I mean, it's, but also at the same time, we had to do one flag, but then Angelo still got in the crowd with his big flag and still said fuck racism. So I mean, we kind of, it's a balance where I can't necessarily, I'm not trying to censor artists. They're going to do their thing, and I booked Fishbone knowing exactly well who they are and what they're doing. So I mean, they kind of played game with us and everything, but it is an all ages environment. I want, we do want people from all backgrounds and all ages to be able to come and not necessarily have too much of an issue. I mean, I try not to be too much of a hard ass about it. And they played ball.
Yeah, you don't want to offend the racists. That sucks. I mean, they spend money too.
No, I mean, no.
It's a free event, so the racists didn't spend the money.
I mean, all of our events are free and everything like that. So I mean, we did one flag, and it's kind of, I mean, we are a nonprofit, and it's an all ages, environment. So I mean, that's kind of like how you go around.
How'd you settle on funk racism? It's like, look, I'll trade you like a letter. Okay, that's the best I could do. If you just change one letter.
It was Angelo's idea. I'm like, I had to go to him like, hey man, like I personally don't mind. Like I get it. But yeah, there are kids around and everything like that. So like, can we do something? I asked him to play ball, so I got to thank them for doing all that. But then also at the same time, they're passing out their flyers and like the poster boards he was making, the screenings that he made for the show, and they all said folk racism and everything, and like people from the city, Department of Cultural Affairs are buying that with their kids and everything like that. So I mean, we still we did one flag in the beginning, but then like honestly, an hour into the show, I'm like, whatever, dude. Like, there's 3,000 people here. I'm not gonna sit here and try to micromanage. People are here to like let's have a good time. I'm not gonna try to change it anymore, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. So we obviously gotten to the point of we've kind of name dropped the Levitt a few times in this conversation already. Want to know if you can give us a little breakdown of what the Levitt is.
So the Levitt there's actually 10 different venues across permanent venues across the country, mostly in the Midwest. We're the only West Coast one for now. I know they're trying to open stuff up in the Bay Area, but it's part of a network of nonprofits that provide free music for their communities and for the different cities that they're in. So we're here in LA. There's one in Denver, Memphis, Westport, Connecticut, Dayton, Ohio. They're trying to open one in San Jose, San Francisco, Orlando, and we're pretty much the whole mission of our nonprofit is to provide free live music for folks. It's important to have. No one should have. The nonprofit doesn't feel like anyone should have to spend money to enjoy live music. Because a lot of we try to book bigger shows that may cost, $40 or $50 a ticket, times, you got 4 or 5 people in your family, you're talking, $150, $200 night just on tickets plus food and parking. And so we want to make that, access is important, and we want to make sure that, folks have the ability to go see, live music in their communities. And we try to represent, here in LA, we try to represent the diversity that is LA. We try to represent, as many people as we can, maybe not in our own in one season, but throughout the years. The Levitt Pavilion in MacArthur Park's been open since 2007, so this is our 14th season. Typically, we do 50 free concerts in June, July, and August every single year. It's about a 15-week run every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. With the pandemic and everything, we kind of made some decisions. Right now, we're only doing about 12 live concerts, and then we're doing a little 5-part mini documentary that's going to be starting on July 30th. But yeah, I mean, our big thing is like we just want people to be able to enjoy free live music and not necessarily. There doesn't necessarily have to be an economic standpoint, at least coming from the audience the audience view. Although we, at the same time, we do pay all our bands. We don't do the whole pay to play. We don't do the whole come play my stage for exposure. It's like, no, everyone gets paid. It's very important that, that we, it's one of our pillars that all the musicians, everyone that you see on that stage, from the technicians to the bands and the managers, to the hospitality and groundskeeper, they all get paid. It's important that that's a part of what we do.
So one of the people chiming in on to ask, how does the Levitt deal with like the high homeless problem at the park?
I mean, it's their community too. It's
good answer.
It's them. It's for them as well. Like, we ain't trying to discriminate against nobody. Like they live in the city too. I mean, I know a lot of people, there's all this disinformation, like, all these people from out of state are being shipping their homeless here. It's like, no, not really. Most of the transient population in LA are from California. So it's their backyard too. They live there too. They deserve to enjoy music as well. Unfortunately, there is a mental component to not just our area of town. We know MacArthur Park has its reputation, at Viv, she made mention of that way back in the day, but, and we work with the city to provide services for those that want it, and we try to provide it. But at the same time, like people, I think everybody, no matter what your economic circumstances or your housing circumstances are at that moment, that you should still be able to watch live music and not have to pay for it. It's, so I mean, it's part of it, but I mean, like, it's not just the MacArthur Park. I mean, it's a citywide issue right now, or has been for a long time. And we just try to make it as opening and welcoming to everyone as possible.
Mm-hmm. And one last follow-up, how has now that cannabis is legal, how's that changed the crowds of like venues, outside venues in general? How do you feel about that?
I mean, other than like security doesn't have to be quite as uptight about it, I don't think much. I mean, like every concert I've been going to since as a kid, people still smoke weed. Like they're gonna want to smoke weed, they're gonna smoke weed. Like that's
right.
it's part of the deal and everything, just like alcohol is and everything. I mean, people do partake when they come to Levitt, but we do ask people to go to, like, can you go to the top of the hill and everything like that? Because, we don't want, just because that's the choice of one individual, it might not be the choice of another person. And especially we do have children that do come to our concerts, or like parents that, say like Fishbone, that was a big concert and that was a cool thing. They've been around since the 80s. And so a lot of people who were teenagers listening to that music back then are now older and they have kids and they brought their kids. And so like, it may not necessarily be the choice of the parent, to want to have kids necessarily around that, but also at the same time, we're not trying to be narcs about it. And like, that's what you want to do, cool. I mean, I encourage people, like, you should vape more because you don't notice it. But for people who like want to still partake in smoking flower, tell them, hey, can you go up to the top of the hill and like, go up there. I mean, technically it's a public park in LA, and you're technically not allowed to smoke in the public park in any public park in Los Angeles. But I ain't trying to kick nobody out, just for that. That's as long as folks can come and act like adults and handle themselves and like don't become a responsibility to anybody else except for their own, then I'm not saying nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So by the way, this episode is sponsored by California Cannabis, Soto, Melrose, and Crenshaw. And also one of the guys in the Pharcyde, Brown, he's like Pharcyde TV is kind of like his baby. He has a company called Batos Gardens, and they have a really nice vape oil that I'm going to make sure that you may be able to give it to someone who may be able to enjoy it. Not saying that you would be able to enjoy it or that I would give it to you, but it would be placed in your possession to hand on to somebody that might like to get into that. So with all that being said, how did you start working for the Levitt?
So I used to work for this company called Spaceland Presents. They own a couple of venues here in Los Angeles, the region, the Echoplex. They also do a lot of outside events at the Santa Monica Pier, Echo Park Rising, MoCA, the Natural History Museum. And I was working for them for a couple of years. And the Levitt in 2017, they were changing some directions and decided they wanted a new team and ended up hiring Spaceland to produce their shows. And so that was my assignment working for Spaceland, to essentially handle the Levitt and to like run and produce it. And then from there, the Levitt decided they wanted to kind of not outsource any of their work anymore. They wanted to have an in-house team, and they kind of ended up hiring, myself and then some other people outside of that, and kind of like brought us all into the fold. That's exactly how it kind of like went down.
So what are the duties of the gatekeeper / program?
So what do I do? Essentially, if we were, I'm the talent buyer, so I book all the bands. But I'm the producer, production manager, and front of house engineer. So I pretty much go from booking the bands, organizing the shows, of how it's going to be laid out, run all the advances with the bands. I designed all the sound, lighting, and our LED wall. And also this year, new to this year, we're going to be live streaming all our concerts. So I designed all the cameras and the switcher for all of that. Bands, all the shows, I work as the production manager, making sure all the bands, they have all the needs from their writer and their hospitality. And then I also run the front of house sound.
Okay.
So I wear multiple hats. At other venues that I work at, I wouldn't necessarily, there would be like 3 or 4 people doing a lot of that work.
Mm-hmm. What was the first show you produced there?
2017. Who was the first band that we got in there? Oh, Kinky. They're a band from Monterrey, Mexico. They kind of do like a mix of Latin pop, hip hop, electronica. That was that was kind of like the first show that I got it locked in 2017, and then from all the other shows there. That was like one of our biggest nights. We had like 3,000 people there, and then what's his name? Diego Luna. He's a pretty famous actor. He was in like one of the Star Wars films. He kind of came by and like hung out and everything. And that was kind of 2017 was like kind of our the first big shows. Although a lot of I don't necessarily just book I guess you could say well-known popular acts and everything. We definitely also book a lot of community and cultural based events, especially on our Sundays, and try to like, work with different up and coming, I guess, their bands are just cutting their teeth to kind of open up for those bands and everything as well. So we kind of run the gamut of, really popular acts that are going to bring a lot of people, people like Fishbone or Celsophenia. We're not doing it this year, but every year, 2017, 18, 19, we do our Stevie Wonder celebration. Actually, in 2019, he actually came on out. Actually,
I saw that.
Yeah, actually, you saw on the video. I actually ended up having to be his bodyguard and like escort him to and from the stage because so many people were like Stevie and like just wanted to like jump on him. So he kind of got on stage and did his thing and was
Spinner was there, right?
Yeah, it's Spinner.
That was a big deal, man.
Yeah. So we couldn't do it this year just because like with the pandemic, we're playing things a little bit different. But I think in 2022, I definitely want to bring that event back. Hopefully, we'll get Stevie to come back. But yeah, no, Spinner. I mean, he's been at the game for lot longer than I have. Work with my boy Assad with Footlong Development to bring that. But that's been one of our very popular events. And I mean, Stevie's from here, so this is his town now too as well. So yeah, we'll definitely be able to bring that back in 2022.
Who influenced you the most?
What's that?
Who influenced you the most?
Like as in, what do you mean? Like as in like as a musician or a booker or?
I would say honestly, all of it. I mean, I guess it could be heroes, or it could be very general. You don't have to be like this morning, I guess.
I mean, growing up as a kid, like I was always to see shows like Bill Graham Presents. I mean, he kind of like did a lot of stuff. I mean, he's got did the Forum of it in New York and San Francisco. I mean, he kind of helped bring a lot of like those like hippie bands back from the day. So like say like Grateful Dead. I look up especially as a sound engineer, I look at like what they did. Like, I mean, they essentially like invented like giant sound systems like that, back in the day in like the 60s. And so, yeah. And honestly, Barry Gordy, I mean, that man is a genius.
Gordy.
He pretty much how half the business runs now is because of what that man did. Like he like turned it into, he was like, the Henry Ford of music. He really like made it a one-stop shop for like musicians to like record themselves, market themselves, get out there and tour. Like he really made an opportunity for folks to, starting out, over in the Midwest and coming over here to LA. Like the man's a genius. I mean, I still look to him to this day, like, all the stuff that he did. I hope that I can have even like 0.5% of the impact on the world that he has had on everybody's lives, in the music industry.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a huge one.
So as we were having our B-roll conversation, we got car alarms going off in the background and M80s going off, and and they're not running out of fireworks, man. They are not running out of fireworks. Like, man, the fourth was several days ago, man. But that's just where we at. So tell me this: how did the Levitt stay engaged during the whole COVID thing?
Let's see. Last summer we kind of did some virtual concerts. That's kind of what we ended up doing. Is like that's all we really could do. Unfortunately, like things were locked down, and our bread and butter is live music. I mean, our thing is trying to bringing people together en masse, and so it was. I would be lying if I said it wasn't difficult. It was very hard. That we had to like really like. I had to cancel a lot of music. It's literally like we were going to announce our 2020 season in a week, and then COVID happened, and it just, I had over 175 bands lined up. About 80 of them were like from international bands and from out of town, and so having to like go through and be like, "Yo, this is not gonna happen. I'm sorry. I don't know." Like it just literally felt that I could see it like slipping out of my hands, and so. We had to kind of like change gear, and like we did a bunch of like live streaming events, like how a lot of people kind of hopped on into, and we got some successes with that. And I don't know, I enjoy the live streams and everything like that, but it's nothing like having a loud sound system and all these people around you and feeling that bass and like feeling it thumb through your body and like through your heart. So I mean, we did the best we can, like how a lot of venues did, and kind of like just adapted. I mean, that's what. I feel like that's what the arts and music does, is like you adapt with times and do what you can to continue to get your art out there. So yeah, we just, we engage folks digitally.
Speaking of that, Do you feel like radio promotion still helps with live shows?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I mean, especially here in LA. I mean, we're still heavily car culture and everything, and it depends what radio you're talking about because it's not just necessarily terrestrial radio anymore. I mean, you have the whole digital platform and things like Apple Music and Spotify and Tidal and like all these different digital platforms. I think is extremely relevant. I mean, you want to get in people's, a lot of bands, they pay a lot of money to PR agents and stuff like that to get their songs in specific playlists and stuff like that. So it's radio, whether it's traditional, you can turn it on your car or your boombox or listening to online, it's extremely relevant. Podcasts are super huge now and stuff like that, like this Pharcyde TV, on YouTube, it's extremely relevant. I mean, I probably listen most of the music I listen to is for YouTube. I think it's, especially with the digital age, it's expanded people's abilities. I remember when I was in high school, some of the records that I had to go to digging through the crates to find. I'm like, I can't find this anywhere, and I want to find this. And now it's like your fingertips now. Even like some of the rarest records, like people are digitizing that stuff now and like putting that out there for the world. And like there's all kinds of music that I listen to from all over the world that may not. You'd have to go to a specialty shop around town to it might happen, or you'd have to like kind of convince the record store owner, but like, yo, can you import this for me? And like maybe pay a premium for it. Now with the digital, with everything being digital and online like this, like it's almost at your fingertips. Things like SoundCloud is like extremely important. And also with the technology, it's no longer you no longer need $1 million studio to be able to produce your records. I mean, like what's her name, Billie Eilish. I mean, she swept the Grammys, not like what like this past year, but the year before that. And like her dude Phineas, he's recording off an Apollo. That's not, I mean, it's expensive, it's a couple $1,000s, but it's not $1 million studio or anything like that anymore. So I think it's somewhat even the playground, for up and coming artists to really like get themselves on a international platform. Although at the same time, it's a double-edged sword that there's so much content out there now that it's almost hard to get through all the noise and everything and try to find things that you want. So it's a double-edged sword a little bit, I guess you could say.
So what do you believe is the most important part of like the music developmental process? I'm gonna edit the question a little bit because I know for me it was inspired by Jay-Z was kind of saying like as an artist, like he almost was kind of suggesting that we can develop you later. Like it's just about if you have like it or not. You know what I'm saying? And then dealing with live performances, it's like you kind of probably get a chance to see people like first like come into like the music that they wrote, like and then perform it. But I was wondering like what part of it for you do you feel like is like the most important or stood out the most?
I mean, I mean, for me personally, I think always the hardest part is just straight up writing your songs. That's always at least been the challenge I've always had as a musician, is just straight up getting your ideas on tape or on paper or whatever and getting that recorded. But I think, once you kind of get over that hump, I think, especially live, the biggest thing is for musicians on stage to kind of like let go, not be so nervous and like kind of let go of the fact that like, hey, you're on stage in front of like thousands of people. And I think, like I was kind of riffing on earlier, is like, don't be afraid to be learning how to be vulnerable on stage. I think that's a key point that artists, they go from like kind of like local underground and like where they're able to start getting more national, international successes. You see them that they're able to kind of be their genuine self and be like raw on stage. People pick up on that. They want to see that vulnerability. I remember I was younger and I was watching like the Odd Future Kids and everything like that, and to see them like then and where they are now, it's like night and difference. They'd be on stage like kind of barely moving or like sweating it, and not being too afraid to let go or being vulnerable and kind of like let people see themselves in a different light. May not who they be like just on the streets and just as regular people, but like being able to come into like a persona on stage and letting whatever you have, like everything that you've always felt you wish you could be, and like letting that come out on stage. I feel like that's a really huge hump a lot of people have a hard time getting over, because it could be scary. You're putting yourself out there, you're putting your neck on the chopping block, People can be brutal. Some people may like it and some people will. Like, there's a lot of artists out there that you either love them or you hate them, but those artists, they keep pushing along and trying to be their most genuine, vulnerable self on stage. I think that's a huge development part, because yeah, I mean, it's true what JC says. Yeah, you'll find a PR agent, you'll find a stylist, like you'll find a photographer, like you'll find people that will like make you look good, but like you have to like already kind of have that going on first. They have to see that spark in you first, and for you to be able to dig that out of you and develop that, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I'll say another thing that he was saying that kind of triggered me when he was talking. He was talking about. I've seen him tell the story before, but he recently kind of brought it back up when he was around. He was on the shop. He was talking about doing the Rock the Mic tour, and he was the Hard Knock Life tour, and he was the headliner, but he would have to perform after DMX every night. And he said, like, just he couldn't compete as a performer against DMX because DMX was way more emotionally vulnerable than a Jay-Z, especially around that time, where, he said before he would even go on stage, he would just growl into the microphone and the crowd would go nuts. And before he even got out there, so he'd get out there, they already hyped and amped up. And he said it took no work, just, and he said, so now he's on stage performing. He said he performing it, and he said all the guys are into it. So then he takes off his shirt, and now all the girls are into it. And then, these are things that Jay-Z does not do. And then he said, that's like literally halfway through. Then he said, like towards the end, he says this prayer. And now he's saying a prayer, and he said everybody's crying, and they're like all like emotionally like, oh man. Then after that, he said thank you, good night. And then after that, they go, come to the stage, performing Hard Knock Life, give it up for JC.
I mean, I feel his pain. That's like, DMX. I mean, rest in peace. Like, that's a hard act to follow. I mean, because he did everything. Like, he left everything on the floor when he was on that stage, and so I think that's a prime example of what like musicians and up and coming folks, like, they need to like pay attention to. Look at those things. Like, don't be afraid to study the people that inspire you, the people that you're taking influence from. I mean, like, the people that you're ripping off. I mean, like, good artists steal, like bad artists borrow. So like, don't be afraid to like look at those things and take from their lessons and grow from the lessons that they learned. And like, but yeah, like put it all out on the floor, because people eat that shit up. Like they love it. They want to see somebody that they can relate to and like experiences that they can relate to. I mean, and that's how you get people coming to your shows and they're like repeating all your lyrics. It's because like something that you do touches somebody else in a way that's like raw, and like almost hard to like put words to. And when you see it happen, it's magic. I mean, when you see a whole crowd and there's like 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 people in front of you, and like they're all like just going off, like it's like nothing else. Like you really. And then when you get to, you get past that, you get to a point where like, how to control that crowd and you can get them to do whatever the hell you want, essentially. Like you have command over that crowd, and they will listen to every single word and every single beat or every drop of the guitar or whatever you got going on stage. They will like take everything and absorb all of it. And I mean, honestly, it's kind of like, it's a lot of power. And, it's almost scary to be able to kind of like weld that in front of, a crowd.
Mm-hmm. I'd say that's one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to comedy as well, is sometimes I feel like the term comedy is very limiting, because I feel like the best comedy experiences you have gives you the full spectrum, full range of emotions. You know what I'm saying? I think it's somewhat ignorant to think you're just going to walk into this place and laugh your head off for 90 whole minutes and then walk out and be like, oh, this is great. You know what I mean? With anything, it's the experience, just like a good movie or TV show or anything, the best of the best. And you could tell by what people choose as the best. Like a lot of people, when it comes to comedy, choose Richard Pryor. He wasn't the most talented. He couldn't juggle. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't like blowing up balloons or doing weird shit on stage. He was like giving you a full emotional experience. So you come out, you're like, I relate to this guy. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel his pain. I felt what he's going through. Even if you don't directly correlate it, you're like, man, he touched me. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that's why, him and Carlin, like they're it. Like, when it kind of, I mean, I'm not an expert on comedy, but like me growing up, I mean, yeah, Pryor and, Paul Mooney and Carlin, I mean, like those are like, when I think of comedy, like those are the people I go to, and like, they put everything out there. They did not hold back, and people gravitated to it. And you see like up and coming, people that are now, or like people, you look at Chappelle now, and like he references like, Mooney and Fire and Carlin about like what they did, and he's essentially like, I try to do what they're doing, and like that's why he's in the place that he's in now, and like one of the best comedians in the world currently. So I mean, like, and can almost do whatever the hell he wants at this point. So it's the same thing. Like they were just super raw on stage and like vulnerable about things that really affected them, and had no problem talking about it in a really real way. They didn't hold back, and like weren't afraid to talk about something because they might, offend somebody, or like might say the wrong thing. They just said it, and like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, who would you say your top 3 favorite musicians are, dead or alive? And it could be um, people who play instruments as well as vocalists.
Man, that's always a hard one for me to pick. Like, who are my top musicians? I mean, I'm not necessarily the biggest like vocalist or anything like that. I'm more of a instrumentalist myself. See, I would have to put Stevie Wonder up there because like he's just everything. I mean, there's nothing he can't do. He's an amazing singer, a songwriter. I mean, that song "As" that he did, like that's like the perfect love song, but also at the same time, like when that drum and bass gets going, it's like, fuck, that's so good. Like it's just tight, and it just gets me going every time. Like I love that song.
That's actually one of the hardest songs to find because of the title. That's one of the hardest songs to find.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably my favorite song that he does, especially because like what Herbie Hancock was on that, playing the Rhodes and everything like that. So it's just like, damn, there's so much talent going on here. But then it's also a beautiful love song. I'm like, man, this is straight up poetry.
What does it be like? All be like, because I was like, oh, is it Always or Angels Under the Sky? Like, what is that song called?
So Wonder. When I was younger, I was really into Fleetwood Mac. So I'm really, when I was younger, I really, why I wanted to play guitars, because I pretty much wanted to be like Lindsey Buckingham, the guitarist for Fleetwood Mac. He's extremely talented. He doesn't even play with a pick. He plays like open hand, and it's like almost like his left and right hand are like two different minds going. So just like you watch him play live, like back in the '70s, and it's like, especially like all the drugs that they were under back then, like you're just like, how does he do that? Like the amount of talent coming out of him. I like them a lot. And let's see. I'm trying to think who else. And probably more recently, I'd say like when I was about 22, I really fell in love with Fela Kuti. I mean, he invented, Fela Kuti. I mean, like just like what he did, and essentially inventing a whole genre of like Afrobeat, and like what he did, and bringing all kinds of different people together. Because I mean, you had people like Ginger Baker from Cream like playing with him, and he was like, and you see like pictures of him like with Andy Warhol and everything. I think he, what he did, he was a big influence, and like the impact that he had in life. And it just, the groove, I mean, I'm all about the groove and everything like that. If it's got a good beat and a good bass line, I'm there. And if it's heavy, that's always what I want. And his, their music's super heavy, and like, and I just love that big sound. Like, he had a big 20 people on stage, and beautiful women playing horns, and like, gorgeous men like on stage. Like it was just like, yeah. So I would say like those, Fela Kuti, Lindsey Buckingham, and Stevie Wonder, kind of like my, kind of go-tos. Whenever like, because I'm, sometimes it's hard because I'm constantly listening to new music and everything like that. But when I want to go to and like listen to music and I want to like reset myself, those are like kind of the bands and the people that I go to that, kind of bring me back home and bring back a lot of good memories, growing up as a kid.
So if you could have your dream verses, people dead or alive, who would you like to see verse who?
Like people battling, like musicians battling each other?
Yeah. For fun, but two people who you feel are or were at the top of their game, and they're going song for song, or a couple songs for a couple songs.
And that is a hard one. See, I think definitely John Bonham. He's a drummer from Led Zeppelin. I mean, as far as my concern, as far as drummers, he's like the best. A lot of techniques that he did, people, I mean, but he was ripping off jazz artists as well at the same time. So At least right now, yeah, either John Bonham, and then there's this other cat name. His name's Kaitro Soto. He's kind of known for popularizing like Afro-Peruvian music. He's a cajon player, but the way his voice was, like, it's extremely haunting. I really, feel people, they should really listen to his music. He's an extreme musician, talented singer and cajon player. So I mean, if I can see like those two playing off and like going beat for beat, like it's, yeah, they're almost intimidating about how much talent they have and like what the techniques that they have. It's like, and then like, but then you watch them play like old videos of them playing. It's all like they almost look bored and like it's almost effortless for them. Like so, yeah, those are the two people I'd want to see, come back. 'Cause, they're not with us anymore.
Mhm. Yeah. So we have another comment question. They said, do you see more artists singing over their own pre-recorded vocals, or they just go off their own?
It depends on like the gig. I mean, sometimes smaller gigs, like people will, will play just the backing tracks. That's a thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I know some people might have apprehensions against that and everything, but I think it depends on the gig. But I don't think there's anything wrong with folks taking their music and like essentially having backing tracks. And sometimes it's not viable for the musicians to be able to afford a full backing band. Sometimes it's especially with things becoming more harder and harder, especially with record sales dropping significantly and everything like that. It's harder. Most musicians nowadays, they make most of their money from touring. And honestly, the major musicians, they make more money off of sponsorships than anything else. The money they make off of the music is nothing, almost comparatively. So it's it's constantly changing and everything like that. It just kind of depends on, can they still work it or not? Like, if they can still bring energy and that vulnerability, and like, yeah, if they just have backing tracks to them and like, they're just push and play on their Ableton rig, that's cool. But also at the same time, if they want to throw live musicians on there as well, I think, it's all good for me. I mean, it's music is music for me, and I think it's all about, can you bring that vibe? Can you pump up your crowd? Like, shouldn't, whether you have live instrumentation or backing tracks or pre-recorded stuff on stage, I think it's almost irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I thought this one in there. What's your biggest regret?
Not getting started when I was younger.
Hey,
like, I mean, I got to be honest.
That's one.
I spent a lot of time in high school playing video games and smoking weed. Not that like, I didn't enjoy myself and don't, even go back to that now, but I feel like if I was to go back and tell my younger self, like, what are you waiting for? Get out there now. Like, no one's stopping you. Like, there's no, the opportunities there for you to grab. So it's like, I wish I was almost like 12, 14. Cause I see like, these 12, 14-year-olds, like, one of the bands we're working with this summer with the Levitt, AJ Bosco, we're booking her. She's like 14 years old and she's fucking killing it. Like, it's all like, by 10 years from now, when she's 24, there's no reason why she can't be running everything, like, in the genres that she's working on. I mean, she was just in the Birds of Prey movie, the Harley Quinn movie. She was just in that. And she's like 14 years old. Yeah, and she's already like playing national tours and on national.
Was she the little girl in the movie?
Yeah.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so she's playing with this.
Funny too.
What's that?
I said she's funny too.
Yeah, exactly. No, and she's 14, and I was like, geez, man, she's already doing it. Funny enough, she's part of like this whole like the Filipino, like they're kind of like almost like Filipino royalty. Her uncle, I believe, is Dante Bosco. He's a voice actor. He played Rufio in that movie in the 90s, Hook, and a bunch of other stuff and everything like that. So they're kind of like royalty in those scenes and everything. And yeah, I almost feel like happy, like, cool, we got her in before I can't afford her anymore. And she, there's no, she's going on the path that she's going now. By the time she's 24, she should be at the Hollywood Bowl and playing in front of 20,000 people. And like, so it's like that's kind of my only regret, is like, I wish I could have started younger and like, I don't, maybe be in a different place. But also at the same time, I try not to have any regrets, because it's like, I feel very blessed to be where I am in my life right now. I have an amazing job where I get to essentially book bands and got a roof over my head and a happy wife, and I really can't complain about much. I know I'm a lot more blessed and privileged than a lot of folks in this country. So
yep.
I really don't have that many regrets, other than like maybe I made different decisions when I was younger and just kind of got at it more and didn't let maybe my own insecurities when I was younger get in the way of me being me and like kind of going after my dreams. You know, it's something I try to, I know it's cheesy and everything like that, but it's still a real thing. Like, especially for like teenagers and kids, it's all like, like there's opportunities in this country, and like, yeah, there's a lot of blockers and there's things like, that might get in your way, but like, you got to keep pushing forward, because like somewhere somebody's going to notice that fire in you, and they're going to take hold of that and want to like be a part of your path.
Yeah, you hit every note of that question that like I was going for. So yeah, thank you.
Dope. I want to spin it back to elaborate on that one question that was asked by someone in the chat room about musicians and vocals and all that kind of stuff. With the new generation of musicians that we have, and I'll speak to hip hop, because the younger hip hop artists, I've seen footage where these cats are rapping over their songs. So not ad libs and not backup tracks or whatever, but they're just rapping just over their song, and they're actually doing the ad libs, and they're taking the mic and like maybe sticking it to the audience, and if they're lucky enough, the audience may know the lyrics. My question to you, as gatekeeper, head cheese, director of the programming, how do you feel when you just cut somebody a check, sent a deposit, you have them on stage, and you're kind of jazzed to see them, because I'm sure you pick a lot of the music, and then you have other people that are coming to you like, oh man, you should check this out or check that out.
Yeah.
You have somebody who you saw on YouTube. You're excited that you're able to book them. Day of the show, they show up. Just pretty much them. Maybe a DJ, but pretty much just them. And they're going over their full song, not backup, not whatever. Are you one to say, you know what? This is their artistic impression. It's not about me. If the crowd doesn't mind, then I don't mind. Or are you like, man, I paid for a band. I paid for.
No, I mean, like, no, it's not about me. I mean, like, I like, I have specifics of music that I personally like to listen to, but it's, to me, a good talent buyer, a good concert producer, it ain't about you. Like, it's about the audience. Like, I almost feel like I get that from like Selena and like her dad. You watch like things that he would say in the past, and it's all about the audience. Like, if the audience is coming for a specific reason because they want to see that artist and everything like that, and then it's my job to be able to provide that platform for that artist to be able to be in front of their audiences and like have that mutual relationship. Whether I like the band or not is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Like, it's the band's, and honestly, like, it's my due diligence to know essentially, what I'm getting myself into and like who I'm working with. And knowing already whether they're going to play with the band or not, or if they're playing backing tracks or whatever. I mean, that's kind of, most talent buyers should already know that's what they're getting into. I mean, last minute things happen, but they have an audience, and like the audience are going to come and get what they want to see out of it, and the artist is going to give it to them. They know their audience better than I do. I mean, I'm just trying to like get the word out and cut through all the noise of LA and all the billion of events that happen every single night, all year long, and trying to cut through that noise and ensure that like people, hey, no, this is happening. It's free. You can come, roll on through. Yeah, my opinions about the craft, or like if I feel they're talented or not, it's almost irrelevant. It's about, are the people going to show up and want to see them? Is this what people want to see in LA? Like, is this what they want to see? That's kind of like the first questions that I go through. I mean, sometimes I throw my mix in there. I'm like, no, I really want to see this band. They're from Argentina, and like, I really like this band, and I want to be the first person, to be able to bring them up to LA. And it's the first time they ever played at LA. I mean, there is one band playing the Levitt this summer, Son Rompe Pera. They've never played Los Angeles before. I personally like them a lot. And I'm kind of a bit excited the fact that this is the first time they're ever playing in LA is at the venue that I work at. So I mean, there is some of that there as well, but it's all about the audience. It's what they're going to do. Like they're the ones showing up. Even though our shows are free, there's still a big economic impact of our shows because of all the businesses that are around, the food. They're buying, instead of paying for tickets to come see this band, they're spending their money on merchandise and CDs and albums and records and whatever kind of collateral, whatever artwork that the artists are bringing along, and they're spending their money on that. And so it's all about them. I have nothing to do with it. My job's just to ensure that people have a good time. And as a sound engineer and production manager, it's my job to make sure that the bands or musicians, whoever's on stage, look and sound their best. And like,
very well put.
Yeah.
I'll be like this. I'll be like, yeah, what's going on, everybody? Now go. Yeah. Yeah. We did it. Your turn.
No, and if that's their vibe, that's their vibe. I mean, like, and that's how they interact with their crowd, then that's how they interact with their crowd. I mean, I've seen a bunch of
just do the podcast like that from now on. Just be like, hey, welcome to Splendid Radio, guys. It's your turn. Just like the whole time. Uh-huh. No. But no, I don't hate on it. You know what I mean? Honestly, I'm always late to trends. So whatever's in just means I need to catch up.
Same, yeah.
Well put. Well put.
Yeah. Where were we at? Where were you when you found out we had to be quarantined?
I was in my office at the Levitt offices. We were it was like I was saying earlier, like it was literally like I think maybe what was it, like February, March of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny enough because I just got back I was in New York in January for like 2 weeks at an international music conference in front of people like all over the world. And it was like March, and like I just started getting the news, and we were literally like a day or two from announcing our entire season. And then I start reading the news, and I'm like, I started talking to my coworkers and our board of directors. I'm like, yo, we're about to announce next Tuesday, and it's like, it's like Thursday of the previous week, and like, you see what's going on, and we're like, we need to hold off on announcing. I don't know what's about to happen. And then, yeah, about a week or two after that, they're like, yo, things are shutting down. We're like, and I started getting calls from managers and agents, and they're like, yo, we're not coming. We're not allowed to. And things are getting shut down in our countries. And yeah, I was in my office, and then like from, like that mid-March, we all got kind of sent home. And we tried to hold off for like a month and everything. We didn't essentially officially cancel our season right away. We tried to hold off as far as possible, but then it got to like the end of April, and we're like, yo, this isn't going away. Like, this isn't like something that's going to last a month. Like, this is a major deal. And like, we just, unfortunately kind of made the executive decision, like, we're not going to do anything. We'll have to transform to like digital stuff, but we're going to stick here to Los Angeles bands. But even then, they are like, Southern California bands, but even then, a lot of them, like, not necessarily all bands, they don't live together. They have a different household, so they couldn't even come together like that. So it was, yeah, pretty much in my office, and then at home, like, finally realizing like, hey, the season's not happening this summer, so it was hard. Like, I'd be lying if I say like last summer didn't really depress the hell out of me. I'm used to working 6-7 days a week, working 78 hours a week. And I like that. Like, I can be a bit of a workaholic. I like working all the time. I mean, this is a lifestyle for me. It's not just a job, 9 to 5, and then 5 o'clock I'm done, and like that's it. Like, no, it's inspiration comes from everywhere. I mean, sometimes I'm 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, oh, this band, I gotta book them, and like look up their information. I'm it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm still listening to their YouTube videos and like researching them. So it was definitely hard last year to like not be able to do anything. I mean, thank God, I kind of got back into live streaming and was doing music videos for folks and stuff like that, but it was still just, I don't know, live music's where I want to be. So it was hard.
So I've been talking to a couple people at different firms, agencies, booking agencies, and stuff like that. And the consensus is that now that the gates are kind of opening up, like shows are just going to be so crammed until the first of next year. And then even after the first of next year, there's just going to be so much stuff. And then maybe around April or May of next year, that's when it'll loosen up where you can kind of work stuff in. With you guys being able, speaking of the Levitt, being able to do shows now, are you just going to do like your regular thing, or because you haven't been able to do it for a while, are you going to try to cram in as much?
No, I mean, we're kind of going almost the opposite, where we kind of, we usually do 50 concerts and we're only doing 15 this year, like 12 to 15. So we kind of had to shorten it, because I mean, we're about to start the July 30th, like 2 weeks from now. And so we do realize that there is still, even though things are opening back up, we still ain't out the woods yet. There's still, here in LA, only like 50-60% of folks are vaccinated. We'll still require masks from people. So I mean, we're doing concerts, but we are kind of trying to do them on a smaller scale, I guess.
Responsibly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the best way I can put it is I purposely, I try to move some bands that we were going to do in 2020. I moved them over this year and stuck to primarily Los Angeles-based acts, although I got a few international. I purposely, I'm not trying to book bands that I know are going to bring 5, 6, 7,000 people or anything like that, just because we know we're trying to ease back into it. Not necessarily everybody's willing to, go back out yet. There's still a lot of folks that are immunocompromised, so they can't even go out, because they can't get the vaccine for whatever reason. I mean, that's why, we're live streaming a lot of our stuff too, because we know different people are at different places in their life when it comes to this pandemic. So, I mean, some people are full blown. I mean, I went out to a couple of shows last week, and, there's a lot of bars that are full blown, like it's packed, no one's wearing a mask. And it's like, people are just like haven't skipped a beat. But then there's still a lot of people out there who don't necessarily feel comfortable, and that's all right on all levels. And so, we're trying to kind of ease ourselves back into it this summer, with the hopes that in 2022, when we come back and do our full 50 concerts, that we can kind of come back and book those bands and book stuff that we know thousands of people can show up to, and people are more comfortable, and hopefully, we're a lot in a lot better of a place this time around next year. So we're kind of playing a little bit easy, but also doing things a little bit different and kind of exploring different things, so that way we can ease back into it. We want people to have fun, but we're also not trying to, play with the devil, I guess you could say, of trying to just go back and all right, let's just have 5,000, 10,000 people come on up and be right next to each other, and have an environment that may not be comfortable or may not be the most responsible way of going about things quite yet, because it's still, we're only a month away. It's only been a month since California could technically open on up. So we have to be responsible to our audiences, to our community, and ensure that we can come back next year. And when, hopefully we're all out of the woods of this, and next, by the time, next summer comes around, that we can really come back, fully, and really come back, and do all the concerts that we do, and book, I usually book 180 bands a year. So I'm gonna come back and do that legitimately, because unfortunately a lot of people passed away, or 600,000 people passed away because of this and everything like that. We don't want to contribute to that anymore, and want to make sure that people's grandparents can come out, their kids can come out. I mean, still is it kids under 12 can't get vaccinated yet, so there's still a lot to contemplate, and we just have to ultimately be responsible to our community and be responsible to Los Angeles at large.
So with that being said, the last question, where do you see social interaction going in the next 2 years?
I mean, I think if we can be proper, and people can we can get, then what's it called? And get most people vaccinated and everything like that. I mean, I feel once things can really open back up again, we're going to have a roaring 20s again. I think people have a lot of time to make up. I mean, we're gone for almost 15 months of not being able to go out, interact, hug your loved ones, meet new people and everything like that. So I think we're almost gonna have an artistic renaissance again, where once things are really, really we really get the go ahead that this pandemic is truly over. I think people are gonna go out and want to enjoy life, and there's gonna be a new zest to things, and new opportunities for musicians to really go and get out there and play a bunch of different shows, because there's even though some things have closed, new doors and windows have opened up, and I think people are going to want to take advantage and get out there. I mean, we're social creatures. Like we have to be around each other. Like isolation is bad for us. Like it's not. People don't like being away from each other and their loved ones and meeting new people and being able to interact and be, physically touch each other and like hug each other. I think people, they need that, in their lives. And at least I hope, I'm thinking, I'm at least betting my life on it that, yeah, we're going to have like a roaring 20s again, I guess you could say. And like, people are going to kind of go nuts, or at least I hope they do, and like really, make up for lost time, I guess.
Sounds optimistic. I'll say, I've asked that question every podcast since COVID has jumped off, and I'll say your answer is about the most optimistic. Mm-hmm. It's the one that I would hope. I hope that it's the way that you're saying that it's going to be. That would be pretty dope.
Mm-hmm. I mean, me too, because I don't know what I'm going to do with myself if there's no more live music. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself anymore. Like it's like I have to be optimistic, because like that's where my life needs to go. Or like, I didn't make. I've been working in the industry for about 15, 16 years now. And so it's like, I haven't been putting all this time and effort and sacrifice and like my everything into this for just to kind of like slip out of my hands again like that. I mean, I guess to make it on a personal level, but I mean, also hope like, music and art are a huge part of us as a species, I guess you could say. I mean, like, cave paintings are real. Like, those happen and everything. That's, we've been putting our mark on walls since day one, so I think, it's people need to be able to express themselves around other people. So I, that's why I got to be optimistic about it, because I really, I don't know what else I'm going to do with myself if we can't.
Would you be for or against required vaccination in shows?
That's a hard one. I mean, how do I put this? As a sound engineer and person who has a degree in science, I want to believe in the science, but I also know that there's a lot of people in this country that have been extremely negatively affected by the medical community, especially our BIPOC communities, where there is a lot of distrust in the medical fields about what's going to happen to them. So it's a hard question. I don't really have like a real answer other than like, I hope that what the medical community and what our government's doing is really truly the best for people, and that like these vaccines, I mean, I got vaccinated myself, and I hope that, this is something that we can truly trust in, so that we can kind of go back and, it's like, I want to hug my grandma again. Like, so it's like, I want to, that's how I kind of look at it as well. Like, I think ideally it would be, yes, people should be getting their vaccines and it should be a thing. I mean, but it's also, is it no different than you having to go to kindergarten? I mean, like when you got to go to primary school, you got to get vaccinated, and it's not just COVID. It's like there's all kinds of other, mumps and polio and all kinds of other vaccines that you have to go to be around people that we've developed as a species to develop these kinds of vaccines to protect each other from these things. So I mean, I hope we don't get to a point where it's going to become mandatory by the government, because people are being like, one part irresponsible, but also one part like justifiably skeptical that the government's being true and like actually has people's backs. So it's hard.
Mm-hmm. That's dope. Well, man, I want to thank you for giving us your time, man. I'll say that this was a very good education about the Levitt, as well as about music. It was cool that we touched on the Inland Empire and the Exodus, the great Exodus. So you have anybody you want to shout out, social medias you want to give out, any upcoming Levitt business you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, our opening show is July 30th, with Florida Margot. I want to shout out to her. Selenamos, their Selena cover band the next night. And then I'm really happy with, I'm a big reggae fan. So we got the Ross Michael and the Sons and Daughters of Negus. He's like OG.
Ross Michael's dope.
Yeah, no, he's OG. I mean, he's legit. He's telling me stories like, remember Bob Marley, we did those. I'm like, man, you're telling me stories about people that I idolized when I was younger. So I mean, I'm really like happy that he's coming back. And I want to shout out to our marketing director, Nancy. I mean, I don't know what I wouldn't know what I would do without her. Because she's, she really makes, she takes my vision and makes it make sense for these bands, and really like gives them a platform to, put themselves out there. I mean, she's like the great connector in LA, so I got to give a shout out to her.
The mayor.
Yeah, I mean, she's almost like one of the mayors of LA. And just shout out to like the Levitt family and the Levitt Foundation, everything that they're doing, not just for Los Angeles, but all the venues that they're opening up across the country. I mean, they're really making it, a point to ensure that, yeah, there's nothing wrong with for-profit venues and ticketed venues, but like, giving an opportunity to folks to be able to see music without any sort of like financial expectation. I think that's something that we need to value more in this country, is that like people need to be able to enjoy things in our country without necessarily having to spend money. I think people should just be able to enjoy things. So I think I want to give a shout out to the Levitt family and the foundation for all the work they've been doing for the past 20-30 years.
No. And you, Jeremy, you got anything coming up? You got anybody you want to shout out?
I'll keep it simple. I'm doing a show. Let me get these dates down. There's somewhere around here. I'm doing I think I'm gonna do the 23rd and the 24th at Comedy Nook on Melrose. I'll give you more information, but I'm kind of all over the place, but I think I'm just gonna do my own night, just literally me and 2 other comics, and do a 90-minute show, in and out. So yep. I'm keeping it local. I've been traveling a lot. I'm tired.
Yeah, man. Jeremy just got off the road with Craig Robinson.
Actually, I just got off the road with Jamie Kennedy, not Craig. Craig was 2 weeks ago. That was a while ago. That was a while ago.
That's right. But no, man, I want to thank you guys. And once again, man, I really appreciate you, Matt, for coming through with this. Once again, shout out to Mayor Nancy. You know what I'm saying? She put both her feet in it, you know what I'm saying, and made it pop off. So this has been another episode of Splendid Radio on Pharcyde TV.